I'll tell you that, when you said looking backwards and thinking of connecting dots, you have to have a willingness to do what other people aren't willing to do, and oftentimes for free. So, as an example, I used to volunteer my time at high schools and make relationships with baseball coaches. For me, and the reason for me it's baseball is because I love it. If you don't love baseball, don't choose baseball. Choose a sport that you love, because every sport has its own language, right? If you speak with another chiropractor or another high-level rehab clinician, you're going to say things in ways that if you spoke to a computer programmer talking about the same topic, you would not use, right? So you just have to understand that every sport has its little vernacular and its language and its ways. And if that's what you want to be a part of, then be a part of that. But just don't pick a sport because it's professional and anticipate, right? So whatever the sport is you have an interest in, or maybe you've played some, it will feel more natural to you, and it will sound natural to the person on the other side, because the person on the other side's no dummy. They know, like, oh, I see, you want to be here working with my kids so you can have them as patients. Like, yeah, but also this is cool. I love this. I could just close
I would spend this time watching, even if I weren't treating anybody.
Yeah, I was saying I could close my eyes and lay in the dugout and just love the sound of a baseball practice. It's, if that's how you feel, then that whatever that sport may be, go there and it will be authentic. And because it's authentic, you will develop trust, because they recognize it isn't, obviously you're going to hope to see a patient and you're going to charge them for that most of the time. I've seen lots of people for free. But when you go there, you're available, they see you, and it's not just about what can, they do for you, but it's also what can you do for them. And then over time, trust is developed. And next thing you know, the coach says, well, the kids are fine, but my wife's having a problem with some tennis elbow. Do you work with that? Like, funny you should ask. I sure do. And then, does she want to meet me at the field? Does she want to come in for an appointment? And you just be the nicest, most caring individual anybody could ever meet. Over time, those sorts of scenarios just sort of build. I had one where it was pretty cool back. I missed the days, but when I cared about the NBA, there was a player from Seattle who made that area his home, and he played for an East Coast team, and he had a problem, and it was clear that this problem was going to take longer than what they had left in the remainder of their season. So they were going to send him home, and they reached out to the Seahawks, and the Seahawks recommended me. Now, talk about trust. The reason the Seahawks knew who I was is because I've been involved with FMS for a long time, and they asked, could someone help us this year? We're shorthanded. Could someone help us with the movement screens? Not going to be able to pay you, but we'll buy you lunch. You can eat at the facility. Yep, I'll do that. So I canceled the day.
For the listeners at home, Dan just jumped up and raised his hand very high. It was silent, but that's what he was doing.
That's we're listening. But the point is that being willing to do that opened doors. And so now, fast forward several years later, the East Coast team didn't have a Seattle connection because the Sonics are gone. So they reached out to the Seahawks. The Seahawks said, oh, we know a guy. He's been helpful for us. And so they gave him my name. And so then, hey, Dan, this is so-and-so from such and such NBA team. Would you be willing to work with one of our players who works in that area? Sure. And then, you get those opportunities like that. So you just, the more things you put yourself out for, even if you're not going to get paid, the experience is worth it. And then over time, they start looking for you on purpose.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Trust Driven Insights, brought to you by TrustDrivenCare. Imagine a world where all your patient communication is in one place, seamless, effortless, and on autopilot. That's the power of Trust-Driven Care. If you're ready to streamline your practice, check out TrustDrivenCare.com and see what's possible. Trust-Driven Insights. Real conversations. Smarter care. Stronger business.